Hello. Hello, everyone. So I made a little tour of the New Westminster Charity Library. I had some time to kill. I try not to do it too often because if you do it too often, you're never going to find anything. So it's been several months, and I also went to a couple of the local charity shops. What can I say? I like cheap or even free books. And I got a stack of stuff here. I'm going to show it to you right now. So all these books were either free or $1. The last one, I hate to be one of those YouTube people that says, and please stick around to the end of the video, but actually the last one I think is pretty impressive. Please like and subscribe, all right? Like, good, subscribe, good, thank you. Come on. Okay, so the first one is really a very strange one. I think I picked it up and I put it back and I picked it up again and I said, well, I don't know. Euripides, God damn it. I said I was going to check how to pronounce that before I started recording the video.
Bacchae.
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 Bacchae. Bacchae and other plays. Why did I pick this up? Number one, I do like to try to read plays periodically, not too often. I want to challenge myself. I mostly read novels. I rarely read any plays or poetry. I make an effort to read one play by Shakespeare every year, but Shakespeare wasn't the only one who wrote plays. Just to keep me interested and excited in the theater, and also to keep my familiarity with a different format. And they're good. They're very good. There's a very good reason why these plays have survived for 2,000 years. Primarily it's because of this one, Medea. I read that for school a year ago and I really enjoyed it, and yeah. So there's more. Oh, this is a strange one. I don't know why. Why do I keep bringing home books by Kingsley Amis? I really don't know. Because I'm not a fan of Kingsley Amis. I read his most famous book, Lucky Jim, and I quite liked it. Kingsley Amis wanted to write novels in a unique way. He didn't want to write the same novel that everyone has always written. He didn't want to write a familiar story. He didn't want to write familiar characters. He wanted to write unique story, unique characters, and give us something fresh. And Kingsley Amis was a humorist. He was a funny guy. It's just that his humor tends to be very dark and bitter. It's almost like if you have a friend who is funny, but their humor sort of leaves you feeling more depressed than full of joy. And that's the kind of author that Kingsley Amis is. Like, yes, I see it's funny. However, I don't know if we always need to look at the world through such pessimistic eyes. What was the other one I read? The Old Devils, and that was, abysmal. I hated that novel. Stanley and the Women. Well, let's give it a try. Let's read the first little bit. First paragraph. It had been one of Susan's most successful evenings. After weeks of hot sun in the late June and July, the weather had turned cool, and some of the people, especially the women, must have been quite glad of the candles round the dinner table. Okay. The room, which she had recently redecorated, looked bright and cheerful. There was a comfortable, friendly atmosphere with everybody contributing something to the conversation. The first course, cold avocado soup, with a sprinkling of red pepper on top, had been made by Miss Shillybeer, the Daily Woman, under Suzanne's supervision, and it went down extremely well. So did the cold cooked salmon with cucumber, fresh mayonnaise, and a sauce made out of chopped olives, also by Miss Shillybeer. Avocado soup and cold salmon with mayonnaise. Yipes. They drank a rather good white burgundy. Now hold on a minute. White burgundy? I think he's testing us there to see if we're paying attention. There's no such thing as a white burgundy. They drank a rather good white burgundy with that, 4 bottles between 8 persons there, and a small glass each of a sweet Rhone wine with the raspberries and cream. By the time Susan took them upstairs for coffee, they were all in excellent form. Would I want to keep reading that? I just don't know why. I see a book by Kingsley Amis and I pick it up. I think it's because I've read most of the books by his son, Martin Amis, and I always feel a little bit obliged to read Kingsley Amis, even though I don't enjoy him as much. This one was a really lucky find. D.H. Lawrence, The Kangaroo. And I'll tell you why it was such a lucky find. It's because recently I made a video, Death of a Hero by Richard Aldington. Right close to the very end of the book, he mentions this book as being a good example of a military realism in literature, in fiction. Thought that was a happy bit of serendipity when I had just finished the Aldington book and suddenly found this book. Escaping from the decay and torment of post-war Europe, Richard and Harriet Somers arrive in Australia to a new and freer life. Somers, a disillusioned writer, becomes involved in an extreme political group. At its head is the enigmatic Kangaroo, to whom Somers, searching for personal and social fulfillment, is alternately attracted and repelled with terrifying consequences. And also I would like to read more D.H. Lawrence. I think this writer is very much like Zola, but perhaps with a little bit less excitement. Zola and Lawrence are really quite close in that they wanted to depict a very clear, realistic portrait of society, even if they got in trouble for it for lewd writing. Wow, really got a lot of Canadian content here. This is a weird one, okay? This one I picked up in a free library. Sack of Teeth by Grant Boudai. So my name is Grant, and this guy's name is Grant. And we both had a short story published in the same magazine, a magazine called Subterrane. I think it was in 2006. And I was living in Budapest at the time. He wrote to me and he said, I read your short story and I really liked it. He said, I have some Hungarian ancestry and I'm wondering, what's it like to be a teacher over there? So he gave me this, these nice compliments of the story that I read, but I had not received the magazine yet. I didn't know that he was also a writer in the magazine. And I think when I replied to him, he was kind of hoping that I would say, similar things. I read your story and I also thought it was quite good, but I hadn't got my hands on the magazine yet, so I had no idea. And Boudai is a very Hungarian name. As soon as I see that name, I know that's a man with Hungarian forefathers. I wonder if I ever wrote back to him. I think I probably didn't. My life at that time in Budapest was pretty tumultuous. So anyway, it's kind of fun that I found this magazine, this book of his. Obviously, he's become a more successful writer than me. Now I get to read it and perhaps I'll write to him and say, yeah, I read your thing. September 1965 is the first day of grade 1 for 6-year-old Jack Klein. It's also the day that two startling events occur. Jack's mother, Lorraine, learns that her husband, Ray, is having an affair. Lorraine also discovers that her secret love, the elderly Frenchman who rents the basement suite, has committed suicide, leaving 36 canaries, a suitcase full of European currency, a sack of gold teeth, and a terrifying photograph. Lorraine's decision about the money, the photograph, and Ray's infidelity would change her life and the lives of her son and husband. That sounds like a very exciting, fun book. So I'm happy I found that. On my 2025 TBR, I have this book, The Book of Eve, and I've read it, but I haven't posted the video yet. The Book of Eve is about a 66-year-old woman who abandons her husband because she just can't tolerate living with a man she doesn't love anymore. And then I found these two Canadian books by women. I'll read you the back. So this is Ethel Wilson, Swamp Angel. Walking out on a demoralizing second marriage, Maggie Lloyd leaves Vancouver to work at a fishing lodge in the interior of British Columbia. Now, what about this one? This is Judith by Aretha Van Herk. Judith, a fine young woman who has become disillusioned with the sophistication of city life, returns to the country to forge her future. Single-handedly, she struggles to run a pig farm while ignoring the skepticism of her neighbors. And finally, she finds a lover who stirs her in ways she'd never thought possible. So I guess in Canadian literature, there's quite a thing with the women writers about leaving the husband. Hey, wow, god damn. This one's signed. That's nice. Thanks, Aretha. Ethel Wilson was born in Port Elizabeth, South Africa in 1888. My goodness. She was taken to England at the age of 2 after her mother died. 7 years later, her father died, and in 1898, she came to Vancouver to live with her maternal grandmother. So there's 2 Canadian novels by women. I guess, it was a big feminist movement going on at some point in the 20th century. We'll see. We'll see. I really do try to keep going with the Canadian content for my own sake. Like if the books are good, I'll make a video. If the books are a bit mediocre, I'm not going to talk about them. On that note, just like Kingsley Amis. Like, why do I keep bringing home books by Alice Munro? I wasn't a huge fan before she won the Nobel Prize. Canada's only Nobel Prize for literature, by the way. Like, she's good. Alice Munro writes very, very long short stories, and they tend to be about young girls in Northern Ontario who grew up hard, and then eventually when they got tired of the small town life, they took a train to Ottawa to work as a secretary and fall in love with a man much older than them. I think that's 60% of Alice Munro's stories right there. See, the thing is that she's got so many collections of these short stories that I always forget which ones I've read. Like, I might have read these stories, I can't remember. Like, every title of all of her books. Dance of the Happy Shades. I don't know if I've read that one. Lives of Girls and Women. I definitely have read that one. That's a novel. Something I've been meaning to tell you. I think that's one that I've read. Who Do You Think You Are? I'm not sure about that. The Moons of Jupiter and The Progress of Love. I know I've read The Progress of Love because I made a review of it at one of the very first reviews I ever made. So maybe I haven't read this one. I think one day I'll be moving to Japan, probably within the next 2 years, maybe even within the next 1 year, especially with the way things are going between Canada and America right now. The majority of my books, I'm going to have them shipped to Japan because, you know, Canadian literature is really quite hard to come by outside of Canada. In Canada, you could pick it up practically for free just about anywhere. I'm kind of hoarding these books with the idea that one day I might want to read them. Also, when I get to Japan, I want to do some sword fighting. Not fighting, but sword training. Is that it already? And now, this is the climax of the video. Get ready. Climax time. So I go into these charity shops, secondhand shops. I have a look. Most of the charity shops, they really don't make any effort to try to have a look. And if it looks like a romance, they throw it in the romance. If it looks like a sci-fi, they throw it in the sci-fi. There's only the vaguest distinction between the popular fiction and literary fiction. I have to look at all of the books, you know, because sometimes a book that's proper good literature will be in the science fiction section. Sometimes it will be in the romance section. Someone might pick up a copy of Jane Eyre or Pride and Prejudice and say, oh, that looks kind of flowery, romance, right? I almost never look at the hardcover books because they're just too heavy and cumbersome. So I was in this charity shop. I gave everything a glance. Nothing was good, which is always disappointing. I always feel a bit silly going into a shop and then leaving a shop not having bought anything, especially a charity shop where it's only going to cost me $1 at most. So I said, all right, come on, Grant, have another look. Try to give them some money today. And then I found this book, first edition. Now, that quite depends on which book it is, don't you know? This book. Now, this book is not terribly old, 2005, 20-year-old book. It's not like finding a first edition of The Sun Also Rises, but it's a first edition Cormac McCarthy, who, you know, just died. Died. And then unfortunately when he died and people started to look at his paperwork history, some really unpleasant information started to come to light about Mr. McCarthy. God damn, man. Couldn't you have said to yourself, I'm 70 years old, I've got those papers with that really incriminating stuff. I should burn that stuff before anybody sees it. Oh, God damn it. Cormac McCarthy's legacy is quite tarnished now. There was a headline about 2 months ago. I mean, if you falsify a passport and you take an underage girl to Mexico for certain reasons, it is going to cast a bit of a shadow on your reputation, I have to say. So there's a first edition, No Country for Old Men, Cormac McCarthy. The book itself is really quite in excellent condition. The dust jacket is beat up a little bit, but inside it's really quite nice. Goddamn, Cormac. Like if he just had have burned those papers so we wouldn't have found out, you know, he would have been Steinbeck, Hemingway, but now that stuff has come to light, it's a bit of God damn it. You know, I'm really a huge fan of Cormac McCarthy. I don't care what he did in his personal life. I care about the writing. That's all I care about. If he was a scumbag, if he was a criminal, that to me is beside the point. All I care about is his ability, his creativity, his perfection as a writer. That's my only interest. There are probably some circumstances where that might change, but anyway, That is a real find. It's just that I don't want to collect books. I've got a supporter on Patreon named John, different John, and he's a big collector of books. He's really fond of collecting like first editions of Lawrence Durrell, which is amazing. For me, books are to be read, not to be collected, says the guy who's going to mail all these books to goddamn Japan. So there we go. All of those books probably cost me about $3. Most of them were free. Pick them up in the little libraries. What are they called? I've taken some photos. Here are the photos. I'll show you what they look like. It's hard to find great stuff. If someone couldn't even be bothered to keep this book, how good can it possibly be? But then again, like I've taken my books to these little libraries as well because I've taken so many in the past. You know, the idea is you take one, you give one. Whenever I do like a book cleansing, I always try to take some of these books back to the free libraries and the charity shops. Maybe they can get a little bit of money. So that is the video for this evening. I hope you enjoyed that. Is that all? I thought I wanted to talk to you guys about something this evening. No, I guess that's it. Me sitting alone in a room talking to a telephone surrounded by a ring light. Please, I'm so lonely. Won't somebody please talk to me? It's okay. Matthew and Yukari are coming back in 5 days. God damn. And I'm going to be a father again with little Matthew here to challenge me and my patience. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Thanks for watching the channel. Thanks for supporting the channel. The channel's doing okay. A little bit of a slump recently. I know why, because, you know, I'm talking about books that nobody's ever heard of. You know, it's hard to generate a lot of enthusiasm and clicks when you're talking about a book that is like, it's like you're talking about your model train set. All right, that's enough for me. Take care. See you later. The world of wine is a mystery place to me. I always get the cheapest one. I always buy the cheapest one and very often mix it with Pepsi. It's a bad habit I picked up when I was in Spain. Young people want to have fun, so they buy the cheapest wine and then they buy a big bottle of Pepsi and they mix them together, and it's called a kalimotxo because it's a cheap way to get drunk, and there you go. Yeah, in Hungary also, I used to drink that too, because the Hungarian wine, the cheap Hungarian wine can be, man, that'll take a layer off your stomach for sure. So you mix that with some Pepsi and you know, it just makes it go down a little bit smoother.